You notice it in small moments first. When money gets tight, you cancel plans more easily. You answer messages slower. You avoid conversations where spending might come up. Nothing dramatic happened, but something in you pulls back. You disappear slightly. Not because you stopped caring, but because being seen starts to feel risky. Money pressure does not only change your budget, it changes how much of yourself you show. You begin scanning rooms for cost before comfort. You measure your words against what they might imply. You think about how visible your limits are. Financial strain becomes social exposure. When money feels tight, presence feels expensive. You speak less so no one sees the gap. You shrink so no one reads your position. You laugh less loudly. You offer fewer details. You avoid situations where someone might assume you can afford more than you can. The pressure is not only about numbers, it is about what those numbers say about you. Money starts to feel like a spotlight you did not ask for. The tighter it gets, the smaller you make yourself. Over time, visibility itself starts to feel like a liability. Money pressure becomes a signal. It tells you when to dim your presence. It teaches you that safety lives in reduction. This pattern rarely starts in adulthood. It begins earlier, when money and visibility were already linked. You may have watched adults tense up when bills arrived. You may have felt the room shift when money was mentioned. Voices got shorter, movements became sharper. A child learns quickly what topics shrink a household. They notice when spending brings conflict. They notice when lack brings silence. Money becomes connected to exposure. It becomes something that can reveal weakness, failure, or blame. If finances were tight, emotions often tightened too. Attention narrowed, patience shortened. Small mistakes felt bigger. In that environment, being visible during scarcity could feel dangerous. Speaking up might add weight to an already heavy room. Needs might feel excessive. Requests might feel selfish. You learn to reduce yourself when resources feel low. Not because anyone explains it clearly, but because the mood teaches it through repetition. Over time, the body pairs scarcity with contraction. It pairs financial strain with social risk. It learns that less money means less safety for expression. So later in life, when money tightens again, the same contraction returns. Visibility drops automatically. The link was built long before you knew it was there. Over time, the body builds a shortcut between money and exposure. It does not wait for conscious thought. When resources feel tight, the system prepares for judgment. It assumes visibility could invite evaluation. The nervous system shifts into reduction mode. Shoulders pull in slightly, voice lowers without intention. You offer less information than you normally would. You edit details before they leave your mouth. This is not strategy, it is protection. Scarcity signals vulnerability. Vulnerability signals risk, so the body reduces surface area. Being seen feels like increasing the chance of loss. Financial pressure activates social caution. You begin calculating how others might interpret your position. You anticipate comparison before it happens. Even neutral comments can feel loaded. The system scans for signs of status difference. It prepares for subtle shifts you respect. The safest move becomes less presence. It's easier to disappear a little than to defend your standing. Over time, this response becomes automatic. Tight money equals smaller presence. The body treats exposure like spending. Both feel like something you cannot afford. As this response repeats, it begins shaping how you see yourself. You start believing you are more appropriate when you are restrained. Visibility begins to feel indulgent during scarcity. Speaking freely feels careless. Taking up space feels irresponsible. You associate presence with financial proof. If money feels tight, then expression feels unjustified. A quiet rule forms inside you. Earn first, appear later. Until then, stay measured, stay small. This rule does not feel harsh, it feels reasonable and mature. You tell yourself visibility should match your position. You tell yourself confidence must be backed by numbers. This creates a split in identity. One part wants connection and normal participation, another part insists on reduction until stability returns. Depending on others feels dangerous when your numbers feel low. You fear being seen as behind or unstable. You fear subtle shifts in tone and respect, so you become careful with your visibility. Careful becomes controlled, controlled becomes distant. Over time, this restraint feels like discipline. It feels like adulthood. But underneath, it is loyalty to a rule learned early. When money tightens, you contract. That rule begins deciding how much of you gets to exist in public. Several mechanisms quietly reinforce this contraction. One is comparison sensitivity. When money feels tight, you become alert to signs of status difference. Small cues feel amplified. A casual comment about spending can feel like exposure. Another mechanism is anticipatory shame. You imagine judgment before it happens. You rehearse explanations that no one asked for. You prepare defenses for conversations that may never come. This drains energy before any real interaction occurs. Then there is self-censorship. You filter stories that might reveal limits. You avoid preferences that imply cost. Even enthusiasm gets measured against affordability. You begin choosing silence over risk. Over time, visibility becomes linked to proof. If you cannot demonstrate stability, you reduce expression. This is not about honesty, it is about risk management. The mind calculates social cost the way it calculates financial cost. Exposure feels like overspending. Attention feels like liability. So you invest less of yourself in public spaces. The pattern rewards invisibility with temporary relief. It punishes openness with imagined consequence. That relief strengthens the cycle. Contraction starts to feel responsible. Expansion starts to feel careless. Visibility begins to feel like something you must earn back. As this pattern deepens, your world begins to narrow quietly. You choose settings where money will not be highlighted. You prefer roles where expectations stay modest. You avoid rooms where lifestyle becomes visible. Invitations start to feel like evaluations. Over time, you stop testing whether the threat is real. Contraction becomes your default posture. Even when finances improve, the reduction can remain. The body does not wait for updated data. It follows the old rule. Less money means less presence. Less presence means less risk. You begin measuring your worth against liquidity. Confidence rises and falls with your balance. Visibility becomes conditional. When numbers dip, you retreat. When numbers rise, you reappear. This creates a fragile sense of self. Identity starts moving with cash flow. Stability feels external rather than internal. You wait for permission from your accounts before speaking fully. The more this repeats, the more your presence becomes tied to performance. You are not only managing money, you are managing how much of yourself is allowed to exist in public. Eventually, this pattern starts costing more than it protects. You become careful in rooms that were never judging you. You measure your presence against numbers no one else can see. Money tightens and you disappear. Money loosens and you return. Your visibility begins to fluctuate with your balance. What started as protection turns into condition. You are not only managing scarcity, you are managing whether you deserve to be seen. The question is no longer why you pull back when money is tight. The question is what happens when your presence depends on a number that keeps moving.